And thank you so much for choosing Morning Live. Now, continuing with the South African Airlines stories, we're joined by board member Martin Kingston to discuss the plans to place the airline under business rescue. Martin, thanks so much for speaking to us once again and welcome.
Morning, Sakina.
Let's just start with the comment from the board saying that it's either business rescue or liquidation. Are there absolutely no other options at SAA's disposal, such as perhaps an outright sale?
Such as what, Sakina?
Such as perhaps, sale? Yes.
No. The fact of the matter is that we had hit an enormous liquidity crisis. It was one that had been created over a number of months. We'd signaled the fact that we were technically insolvent. We'd been making sustained losses for the past 2 years. Although we'd been making real progress in implementing our turnaround strategy, these things take time and require substantial amounts of capital. That capital could only be provided from either lenders who were no longer prepared to make funds available to SAA or from the state. And the Minister of Finance had made it equally clear that there were more pressing and needy demands upon the limited fiscal budget available to the state. We had guarantees that were on our balance sheet, which we weren't able to use to secure funding. And when it became clear that our circumstances, particularly our trading circumstances, had been materially aggravated by the industrial action that we experienced some 3 weeks ago, 8 days of industrial action, by the business rescue application placed by Solidarity, and by the discussions that we had had in front of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, there were only two options available to the board. One was to place the airline immediately into liquidation with devastating consequences, or the other was a managed process where we can salvage what we can by placing the airline in the hands of a respected business rescue practitioner, and at the same time securing some support from the state, financial assistance, 4 billion rand, as we've said. That was quite clearly in the best interest of the airline, the sector, and indeed, I have to say, the country at large.
Mr. Kingston, how does business rescue provide SAA with the protection that is necessary for both the workforce and, of course, the business?
Well, it keeps the wolf from the door for a period of time. All of the workforce remain employed. That doesn't happen in the case of liquidation where they don't get paid. Secondly, as I said, it enables us to access 4 billion rand. When I say us, I mean a business rescue practitioner, where he can assess what is capable of being salvaged, which aspects of the business can be turned around, and which parts of the business actually need to be closed or disposed of. There's very limited time, but that time is much more than a sudden halt. What would have happened in the case of liquidation? And we're talking about a situation the board was placed in where these eventualities would have been happening as I'm speaking to you now in the course of this week.
So in other words, the business will have to be restructured now that it is under business rescue?
I think it's going to have to be restructured extremely aggressively and within a very truncated time frame relative to the process that was already underway, as announced by the board, supported by the shareholders, the long-term turnaround strategy. We don't have a long-term option anymore, and the business rescue practitioner is going to have to apply his mind, Mr. Matheson, with extreme haste to ensure that he can assess what options are capable of being implemented in a relatively short period of time.
And of course, the skeptics are looking at this and they're saying, well, this is just a precursor to liquidation. So what will make this business rescue process either succeed or fail, do you believe?
Well, the board, of course, in these circumstances steps away, not aside, away. Control is vested in the business rescue practitioner. The shareholder equally, although it's an affected party, can only watch. His primary concerns are protecting and maximizing the returns to the creditors and the shareholder. The reality is that everybody, all of the affected parties, are going to have to come to the party. The creditors, up until we placed it in business rescue, are effectively frozen, so we start with a clean slate in terms of what he can do moving forward to maximize the benefits for all parties concerned. But it is quite possible that some aspects of the business will be placed into liquidation if he comes to that conclusion. We very much hope that he won't, and that he'll be able to salvage as much as possible and ensure that an appropriately restructured airline emerges from what was no longer a viable proposition in terms of the group as constituted as a whole. And I need to say that is not just SAA, that is Mango, SAA Technical, which supports a number of airlines other than just SAA and Mango, and Air Chefs. We're very hopeful that there's scope for a viable proposition, as I said, to emerge from this process, but it's going to have to happen with the goodwill, support, and active engagement of all parties, including the workforce.
Mr. Kingston, you know, one has to ask the question as to why the decision to place SAA under business rescue was made at this point. And also, given that Solidarity had brought an application for SAA to be placed under business rescue, why did you not support that?
Well, the Solidarity application was very different to the voluntary business rescue application that has been put in place by the board. I should just add the board can only take the steps of either placing the company in business rescue or liquidation with the consent of the shareholder. There were extensive and intensive discussions with both the shareholder and the banks over the past 2 weeks. But the Solidarity application was based upon business as usual with some fundamental changes. We're talking about a wholesale, accelerated, drastic and dramatic and very aggressive restructuring of the business, which we believe is the only way in which this can survive. As I mentioned earlier, had we been able to access the 7 billion rands worth of guarantees to secure debt, and by the way, these are government guarantees to secure debt, we believe that we could have carried on with the long-term turnaround strategy as it had already been articulated. That was not forthcoming. That became clear, as I said, exacerbated by the circumstances, as we had, and therefore we as a board have no option in consultation with the shareholder, but either to go straight into liquidation or to access capital that was available, access some time, freeze all of our creditors, and hand over the matters to the business rescue practitioner in the hope that he can very aggressively restructure the business and see a viable proposition emerge from it. It's very different. It's a very different approach that's been adopted and hasn't been done before in South Africa, either for an airline or indeed for a state-owned enterprise.
And I hear everything that you're saying, Mr. Kingston. However, the shareholder had indicated some time ago that they were not going to advance any more money to SAA. And my question is, it surely isn't in the last 2 weeks that SAA realized that they need to go the route of business rescue. And hence I'm asking, why did you then oppose the application by Solidarity? I get the fact that you may have a different plan, which would obviously be the purview of the rescue practitioner, but I still don't understand why you oppose that plan, only to come up and say, we have now placed SAA under voluntary business rescue.
Because our approach is not predicated upon carrying on as is. Our approach is predicated upon a fundamental restructuring of the airline, accessing 4 billion rand, which was not available. I have to say, it was not available. There was 2 billion that has been appropriated by the Minister of Finance in his medium-term budget policy statement. The shareholder has now committed to a further 2 billion rand from the disposal of other assets. We don't know what they are. That capital was not available, not to Solidarity, I have to say, and not to the board 2 weeks ago. That was the result of the last 2 weeks of engagement to pursue options other than liquidation, grounding the airline, and all of the attendant consequences. So that possibility only emerged in the past 2 weeks.
So we unfortunately have to leave it there. But thank you so much, Martin Kingston, for joining us to discuss the plans by the SAA board to place the airline in business rescue. And thank you so much also to everybody who sent their messages in this regard. And we'll try and read through some of those. But right now, Valence